Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
So today I'll just talk about natural scene categorization in humans and computers. I hope this talk is a little different from the traditional computer vision talk you'll see, because I'll touch more on the human vision researches that has been going on. So I make an advertisement. I publish under my first name. So if you ever want to cite me, a Google scholar, this is I go under Fei. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. So people attribute this to Confucius, but Wikipedia told me it's actually an advertisement from Printer's Ink in 1921. If I were to tell you that the words that a picture involves are things like horizontal, vertical, edges, texture regions, and so on, it gives you a lot of visual information already, but it doesn't quite communicate at the level that we do. Humans do. We communicate at the level of semantic meanings, and that is so-called high-level visual recognition in computer vision, and that's the field I'm involved in and the questions I'm interested in. So there are many things we can do with high-level vision tasks. A simpler one, we can ask whether a particular object or particular types of object is presented in the picture or not. We call it a detection task. We can actually go further by writing out an inventory list of the objects that are involved in this particular image, and we have many different categories and we want to locate them well. We can go beyond objects and objects and look at the more abstract meaning of the scene. We can categorize the scene, and whether it's outdoor or indoor, or whether it's on campus scene, or anything that would induce our human visual recognition system. So this is the work I'm going to be focusing on today, is scene level categorization or recognition. And here's the outline. Like I said, I want to spend a little more time on human vision than traditional computer vision talks go. And then we'll go into the computer vision task of categorizing semantically meaningful natural images. And I'll show you the model and the experiments and so on. So it's the Hollywood directors who actually found first this amazing phenomenon of human vision. Is that in 1965, Steve, I think that's his first name, or Sidney, Lumet was playing around with films. In particular, he's playing around with this idea of flash cut, where he inserts very fast frames of a visual memory into the ongoing video and tests if the audience can grasp what's going on in that very short insert. And he found, amazingly, human visual system is so good at grasping the contents of the scene that you can cut down the frame presentation time to as short as 1/5 of a second. And then, since then, psychophysics work has been pointing to the same phenomena in human visual system. If I were to ask you to detect a target, in this case a human body, in this rapidly presented series of natural images, there's no problem. We can all do that. So there's something about the human. Think about the complex images here. Humans are very good at doing this. I know, Matt, you're saying, well, I know this. I've been going around looking at things, and this doesn't seem to be amazing. But in fact, it's some discovery that really intrigued visual science since then. So not only so there's another very interesting study done by Irv Biederman in 1970s. He's asking about the relationship between recognizing objects as well as recognizing things. So here is a bicycle, and he asks, let's see if the laser pointer works. He asks human subjects to detect the presence of a bicycle in two types of scenes. One is a scene that's scrambled like this. The other one is a scene that's coherent. And he finds that the bicycle, notice, is in the exact same visual spot on your retina and on the stimulus. But he finds that people are much better at detecting this bicycle when the scene is coherent compared to this scrambled scene. So there is something about comprehending very fast the gist of natural images and helping us to understand objects within it. If you think about it philosophically, it's a bit counterintuitive, because what are scenes made of? Scenes are made of objects, but somehow the global statistical information of the scene actually help you to recognize objects. So this is a very interesting study. And then moving on to more modern days, there's a pretty amazing study done in France by Thorpe and his colleagues. What he does is that he takes a large digital library of scenes, in this case Corel library, and he divides these hundreds of natural scenes into two categories: those scenes with animals versus those scenes without animals. And he just shows the scene to the human subject one by one, very fast, flash it. And all the subject has to do is to answer whether I see a scene that has animals or it doesn't have animal. It's a very, very easy task. Behavioral results gives you 98% correctness. But what's really amazing is, in the meantime, he measures the brain wave, the brain EEG responses to of the subjects who are viewing and making these decisions. And he got two curves here. One is the red curve that shows the average brain response when the image does not contain an animal. And then this is the green is the average curve that shows the brain response that for the image, the trials that does contain animals. And what's really phenomenal is the difference, the blue curve. He sees in human brain, as early as 150 milliseconds, there is a signature that differentiates already high-level categorical information of complex and novel natural scenes. So, and this phenomenon is not affected when color is taken away. And we actually, in our lab, also did something interesting, is that we want to see how far we really get, how much do we really get out of viewing scenes. So we did a human subject study in which that we present a complex real-world scene such like this one, and we present it for 500 milliseconds. That's 1/2 of a second. And you get a novel out of subjects. If you ask them what they see, they just freely type. You can see they pretty much got everything. They start even talking about which era of Europe history this image might come from. So they see it's indoor, they see the furniture and so on. And if the presentation time is shortened to as small as 1/25 of a second, you still get this rough feeling of what the scene is, which category the scene is. In this case, the subject has understood it's an indoor scene. So there's something really amazing phenomenal about the human visual system here. But does that mean human visual system is just over the top good? It doesn't have pitfalls? This is a famous change blindness experiment people have done here. The two alternative images have a difference. I suppose everybody see where they're different. Everybody? So the reflection here is missing in the alternating frames. How about the tougher one? Do you see where the difference is between the alternating frames? It actually takes a while for most people to notice this part. So there's something amazing about grasping the gist of the scene. On the other hand, we're not so good when we have to go very detailed about where things are and so on, especially if they don't affect the global meaning of the natural image. So there has been a very famous theorem in human visual studies about how we recognize this complex world. And the theorem goes like this. So you take a visual image. The first thing the human vision system does, as the theorem says, is that it separates the image according to the feature maps, like colors versus orientation versus depth versus curvature and so on. And then there is this very slow process called attentional process that looks at these feature maps and grabs these features from different locations and binds them together to a mechanism for complex object and natural scene recognition. So that suppose we were to recognize an apple tree, the feature maps will give us things like redness, greenness, verticalness, horizontalness, but that doesn't make a tree. What you need is to bind these features together through this slow attentional mechanism into a recognition mechanism to really make this recognition happen. So we have done a human visual psychophysics experiment to actually test this computational theorem about human brain. What this task does is directly asking the relationship between this slow attentional mechanism and the complex recognition question. So I'm not going to get into the details about the human vision experiment here. The idea is that we want people to categorize a complex natural scene as animals versus non-animals. But the manipulation we do is we take away attention while they're doing this task by giving them a really tedious task that sucks all the attentional resource. And then we want to see how the humans do. And we check whether they can categorize animals versus non-animals or vehicles versus non-vehicles. And then we want to compare that with very simple tasks. For example, green-red disk versus red-green disk, or L versus T. So we're all computer vision scientists here. To do this, it takes, 10 lines of MATLAB. We can all do this task very easily. I don't think we can do animals versus non-animals yet, or vehicles versus non-vehicle. So what would this, and this will be in accordance with what this theorem predicts, that it's much more complicated to do this task than doing this task. But what we found is the opposite, complete opposite. Without attention, humans are still just as good of categorizing natural things as with attention. But without attention, we're just clueless about these simple computational tasks. So there's something about natural things that has gained a special place through evolution in the human visual system, and it's an ongoing investigation in our lab to look at how the human visual system does natural things. So I've told you that I hope I've given you a little bit of taste of this whole research going on in human vision about scene recognition. We're extremely fast and efficient in extracting out the gist of things. The categorization process seems to need very little attention. Object recognition is not necessarily a precursor for scene recognition. Color, low-level features such as color is not critical. And this really poses a very big computational challenge to the model of natural scene category recognition in humans. So now let's just, having gained some background appreciation for this task, that how humans can do it well, but it's still puzzling how we could possibly achieve this such a great success. Let's look at the computer vision task. How do we do natural scene categorization? And I'm always inspired by this slide that I type the word cafe and look at what the masters of paintings have told us, have rendered their version of the same natural scene category. And here we have Renoir, Hopper, Van Gogh, and Degas. Under the same categorical name, you get very, very different things. But they're all categorized by our human visual system as cafe scene. Eventually, one day, we would like the computer to also do this and give the right names. But of course, we have to be a little more humble. We can't really deal with masters' paintings at this stage. So we'll do 13 classes of natural scene categorization, basically 4 indoor scenes and 9 outdoor scenes. And I hope at the end of the talk I'll convince you we'll do a very good job on this. So early days of natural scene research, categorization research, have used a lot of global cues such as colors, textures, and edges, and people tend to do very coarse categorization such as man-made structure versus natural structure, and they just use basically color histogram and so on. Zhenyu, that's not you, right? Okay. And then there's work that separates indoor scene out of versus outdoor scene, and also uses lots of color and texture information, a little more localized than this global features, but still it's pretty rough. Then in the global cues studies, Oliver and Torraba has proposed something interesting at the end of 1999 and 2000, where they actually assign an intermediate level theme or topic to each scene. So a scene is not only about mountain, it's about how open it is, how rugged it is, how rough it is, how expansive it is. And these kind of intermediate level themes actually enriches the recognition system to learn and recognize scene categories. And then recently, from object recognition, we got a lot of success using local patches in object categorization, object recognition. So this idea is used by, Vogel and Schilly, where they chop the images into little pieces and look at what these little piece is in terms of its local theme or topic. So a beach scene would contain 14% of sky, 33% of water, and so on. So that looks like a good idea, except that a poor graduate student has to do this all manually by hand, labeling thousands and thousands of patches in this whole training process. So that doesn't seem to be very efficient, and also human labeling is erroneous. How do we know that's the optimal solution for this mechanism? So what's our intuition? What we would like to do is we still want a local patch-based approach because it is robust to occlusion and invariances. And we also like this intermediate level themes. It's a good idea because even though you get one label out of each scene, you do have these semantically different parts of scenes that are shared across different categories. But then we don't want to do it by manual labeling. We want to do it very weakly supervised. We want to really have the machine to automatically learn all this. So here's the overall system, and now getting to the details. In learning, all we do in terms of labeling is we know which category the scene comes from. Other than that, we don't do any manual stuff. So we first get features out of these scenes, and we'll form a global dictionary of patches. And after that, we're going to express these images as bag of patches, bag of visual code words. And then we'll go through a whole learning process to extract out categorical models. And in recognition, we get a new query image. It'll be represented by the same dictionary of patches as a bag of words. And then we'll make a categorical decision. So let's focus on the representation issue first. How do we represent an image as a bag of words? We'll go through the 3 steps. First is feature detection. We use several things. We use the interest point detectors like the ones from David Lowe's group. We also use Kadir and Brady saliency detector. But I tell you, the best is just a simple little grid that goes through the entire image. Why is that? Why having so much success from the interest point detectors in the object recognition community, why do we find this is much better? I think it's because of the following. In a clutter scene, when you want to recognize and learn objects, you really want to look at busy regions that differentiates objects, the discriminative textures on objects. But when you're doing scene categorization, if a scene has a lot of sky that doesn't have much of a structure, it's actually informative of where you are. It's informative that you might be on a beach rather than a closed indoor shot. So I think that's why this grid detection.
What do you mean grid?
We just chop the image into really regular grids, basically.
So the color, I mean the grid is color, right?
The grid is color.
No, what do you mean grid?
We just, instead of detecting sparse points,
yeah,
we just really take every patch on from a regular grid.
Every patch.
Yeah. So.
Overlapping.
And they actually overlap a little bit. There's some parameters. Yeah, they do. So, okay, so how do we, after we get these little patches out of scenes, how do we represent them? We try sift, we also try grayscale value with some normalization. I don't think they make a huge difference. We'll see later. So for just easy introduction, I'll just stick with the grayscale values. So we just stretch them into a vector for each patch. So then we can throw all these thousands of patches into a very simple clustering algorithm like k-means and get a global dictionary out of things, out of all these things. And this dictionary in this particular experiment looks like this. Nothing unusual. It basically looks like these little simple structures of images. And now, for each image, we have a way to represent them. We can take each code word that comes out of this dictionary and just count how many patches from this scene comes from this dictionary. So you get all this frequency representation for each scene. And that's our representation of an image. It's a bag of words. We lose the spatial relationship between these patches. So this is, why do we think this is anything useful? Because visual world is spatially structured. Well, I think we get a lot of analogy from text. So if I give you a text without really reading it and putting the syntax and the grammar together, if I just say this text has words like sensory, neuron, brain, nerve, cortex, you basically have an idea which category of writing it comes from. It's probably a scientific article about human visual system. Well, if I tell you another text that has words like trading and export and foreign bank and so on, you get a feeling it's an economical paper. So at this categorical level, seems like this basic bag of words representation gives you a lot of signals already. So having represented the images in bag of words, let's look at the tough part, is how do we really build the model and learn the model. So here is a representation of our model. It's in a graphical model. It's a generative graphical model, and I think most of you here are familiar with graphical models. I'll just go through it a little bit. So in graphical models, each node is a random variable, and the darkened node are observed random variable during training, and the open nodes, white nodes are unobserved latent variables. So let me just go through, the plates indicate repetitions and so on. So let me just go through the generative process of generating one image out of this model, and that will be one bag of words. So how does this do? So this particular, we first have to select which category this image comes from, and that's the C node. And this node is a discrete variable that comes from a multinomial distribution. In this case, suppose we have this distribution of all these categories of things. We'll just draw one category out of it. In our case, we just assume a uniform distribution. So now we have a fixed, we know that we're going to generate a beach scene now because we have done this and we got this particular label out of it. So now let's generate the following thing. Before we start generating patches, for each beach scene, for this particular beach scene, we want to generate a mixing parameter or a proportion vector which indicates what are the proportion of the hidden or intermediate level topics. So suppose we have, say, 10 topics. Suppose we want to generate a variable that gives the mixing proportion of these 10 topics. So that would be a multinomial, basically, a multinomial variable. And for variational inference issues, we will give a Dirichlet prior over this variable. But it's important to just know that this pi variable adds up to 1 because it's a mixing proportion. It tells you the yellow topic occupies 10%, the orange topic occupies 30%, the blue topic occupies 40%, and so on. So that's also at the image level. For each image, we get a label of scene category, and we get this mixing parameter. Now we're ready to generate the n patches that comes from this image. So for every patch, the first thing we do is to, out of this mixing proportion of topics, we first generate a topic for this particular patch, a intermediate topic. And that's again a discrete variable, and its prior is precisely this pi we have generated before. Now we know, okay, so we're going to have a blue patch. We know the scene is a beach. We have this distribution, and this particular patch comes from the blue topic. Now we can look at, given the blue topic, out of the code words, out of the code word distribution, which patch can we generate? And okay, we draw this particular one. Again, this is a discrete variable, and for every topic we have a distribution of the code words. So we can do n times to complete the process, and then what we need to do in learning is really to find the best parameters that fits the training data. So it'll be the priors on the mixing parameters, as well as these distributions over each topic of code words. So we can, I'm going to skip this quickly. We can write down joint probability of this graphical model, and it's quite intractable to, the exact inference is intractable, so we're going to use variational inference, and we have derived all the variational equations for all this, and it's in the paper and so on. So basically, using this bag of words representation, we have formulated this graphical model for this particular task, and we have learned the model parameters. Now during recognition, all we have to do is take the query image, represent it as a new bag of word, and just make an optimal decision based on the model parameters we have learned. So basically, we pick the C label that maximizes the likelihood of this image over these parameters. So okay, so I think I've gone through all these processes. Now let's look at what happens in an experiment and some details of this model. So again, we're going to do a 13-class categorization experiment over 13 different natural scenes. And this is the overall confusion table, and it has basically, on average, we have about 70% performance. And let's just look at a detail of one model to see what really have we learned. Suppose we have taken this beach or coast model. Let's look at what is the expected value of this pi over these hidden intermediate level themes. And then we get an average expected distribution of this, okay? So that shows us that there are two themes that are really prominent in this model of coast. Can we see what they are? So let's just look at theme number 13 first. Given a theme number 13, or this intermediate level topic, we can look at the distribution of all the code words or global dictionaries, and we basically get a spike out of it. So what is this? It's actually a horizontal patch, horizontal edge patch. And it makes a lot of sense, because if you look at all the images coming out of the coast category, you have a lot of horizontal structure. It's actually not a pure spike, because I have some noise probability here. Okay, so how about this theme number 15, that's the second most prominent intermediate level theme. This is a little more interesting than the spike we got. And if you look at all the patches that has code words that has significant probability weight, you'll see there are various forms of horizontal structures, even though they're different, but they all give you the sense that this particular class of things have a lot of horizontal structure. And this is the case, this captures the gist of this particular class. And it differs for each one. For example, for the forest class, so here is the coast again. For the forest class, on the left-hand side is our expected value of the pi, the mixing parameter. Here I'm showing you 10 most likely patches that's out of the forest category. And here's just example pictures of the forest category. You can see you have all these slanted broken structures, and that gives you, if you look at the images, a lot of tree and very dense tree structure where the sunshine comes through, so you have all these structures. And another example would be tall building category. You get a lot of images like this. And if you look at the prominent patches that the intermediate level topic gives you, it's a lot of vertical structure, which makes sense. So if you notice on the confusion table, indoors don't do very well with each other. And if you look at why, they basically have very similar patch level distributions. And this is telling us for certain categories of recognition in natural seeing, I think we need a lot more information than just coming out of these local patches. We probably do have to rely on the recognition of objects and functionalities in order to really differentiate indoor classes. And what's interesting is by looking at the distribution of the intermediate level topics and how different scene categories share with each other these intermediate level topics, you can get a nice relationship, sort of a mini taxonomy relationship between these intermediate level, between these categories. And they make a lot of human sense, like highway and coast are more or less together, open country and mountains are more or less together, indoors are confused together, so it's kind of a cute graph, a cute figure. And some of you who have probably more detailed questions, there's the relationship between performance and number of intermediate level topics or themes. This is the training example in performance. Seems like we need more images in our database to do a proper training. This is the comparison between descriptors and detectors. Seems like grid is doing significantly better than other ways of getting the patches, but SIFT is slightly better than the gray, normalized gray value pixel intensity. So, okay. Yeah, I know, we don't have enough training samples, that's a problem.
So it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's going to plateau soon.
So have you tried that?
I think Nabosha was asking first.
So in one of your previous slides, you've shown the features you find, and most of these features seem to be shifted versions of each other.
Yeah, yeah.
So
epitome.
And that's right.
See, I read your mind. Yeah, no, that's a big complaint I have of this work, is that we use a very simplistic way of clustering. We should be able to naturally put epitome into this. Yeah, no, that would really, make learning more.
Training, for example, you'd be able to train with less data.
Exactly. No, that's we're thinking about that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, another question is about the scale.
Scale. Okay. Good question. Out of grid, how do you get scale? What do I do now, which is hacky, is I take a distribution of this, what am I doing? So using DOG or saliency detector, I can get scales out of the patches I detected, and I can have a little distribution. And when I do grid, I just sampled from that scale distribution. There is a combined way of
you estimate the scale from salience.
Right. It's very hacky, I have to say. There is a combined way. I just haven't done it for these numbers. Is that you take the grid, but you use really the detector, more proper detectors, and then out of each grid you can get a scale out of it. So at this point, it's really not very scale invariant from this point of view. Yeah. So I think that's it. So to summarize, we've shown some human vision work on scene recognition, and I've shown you one particular attempt we have for natural scene categorization, and we've tested this on so far the biggest data set we can find. Actually, we assembled this data set, so I think I'm pretty fast. So I think I have more slides on other work, but I think we'll just chat about this.
You're mostly talking about the categorization. That's different from recognition, object recognition.
Yes.
You think this is the indoor scene, outdoor scene?
Right.
If I tell you what are the objects, if I ask you what are the objects in the scene?
No, we don't do that.
More difficult than
right.
Than the categorization.
Right. Our lesson here we learn is that there's so much about the scene we can get out of it to do high-level scene recognition tasks that we don't even have to go through this object level. But doesn't mean the object level information is not important. In fact, I think eventually we need all of them. We need the more low-level statistics like this, but we also, for example, the indoor scenes are massively confused, and we really need object level recognition.
The categorization could help object recognition.
Yes, we can use right. Yeah, so it's a prior information. It can influence the distribution of what type of objects are present. Yeah, yeah. So, any other
explanation to why random is worse than the grid?
Why random is worse than the grid? I don't think why random. So I suppose if you have a perfect random sampling on this 2D image, you should have almost the same thing as grid. But given that, we have 300 by 500 pixels to sample from, and we only get 1,000 patches, it doesn't.
Because you actually repeat the same patch, so you don't get all the information.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So.
Why SIFT improve that random?
Yeah. Why does SIFT work so well, Matthew? I don't know. I think it's. I think SIFT is just a powerful descriptor.
It doesn't work that well. It's just 65 or 64.
Yeah. I don't think SIFT works so well. SIFT seemed to have a tiny bit of upper hand, but yeah, I don't.
So you can SIFT description on a grid, and then you have why do you think random
when you ask the difference between random and grid, then you should look horizontally, and like I said to David, it's because we don't really the random supposedly it's going to sample fairly, but out of each image it doesn't really sample nearly as fairly as the grid. So, and you take such few numbers out of that 300 by 400 patches you can possibly get. So it really doesn't do as well as grid. But yeah, I guess when you have less information, SIFT does do better than gray value pixels. So
you might expect that SIFT would do a bit better because it's just a little bit more shift invariant, like
smoothing.
But the schizo network clustering would be a little bit more compact, probably.
Probably, yeah. I don't think these are the most perfect descriptors or detectors from the scene. I think
Have you tried to use larger batches? In the past, when people have done things like this,
just training histograms of features and so on, they would take patches of different sizes and smooth them and so on.
So I actually did take patches of different sizes. So when I say 11 by 11, it's normalized. My patch actually does have different size.
They all kind of sizes and
Yeah.
use them all the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
But that's still not the same, because you might be looking for particular things of particular scale, larger things. You don't want to classify them in small things.
Right. So the problem is fundamentally we're not scale invariant. That's something we haven't really taken care of.
If you take batches and you scale them all the same size, 11 by 11, then you scale invariant. But you may not want to be scale invariant.
There's the local scale you're talking about and the global scale. So.
You did the global scale by using the salience detection, right?
Depends on which one we're looking at. So the saliency detector, no, we don't really have a global scale. We never estimated the camera distance to the scene, to the, say, horizon or anything. We never had that. All we did is for each local patch, we use a way to condense it or normalize it into a 11 by 11 regular size. And either we use the scale that come for free out of these detectors, or we sample a scale from these distributions for the grid case or random case, because we don't have that information. Yeah. So what, I mean, there's a lot to do in the graphical model part to put more rich information at the object level and also to take care of the spatial interaction, because we assume independence at this point.
Do you have any idea what the effect of your theme parameter is there? I mean, compared to a straw man algorithm of
Just building
right.
tutorial models for each
I don't
class.
do I have this? Hold on, let me see. Okay, I don't have that slide. In the paper we compared with the vanilla just histogram. That's a baseline. So when we did 65% or something, they did that particular algorithm. It's out of the Varmer-Sisserman text-down algorithm, or Zerka for objects, is about 35% performance. So we do significantly better. So sorry I don't have that slide. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.